Hi, everybody, and good evening. My name is Dr. Tamar Andrews, and this is part 3 of our parenting session. Today, we're going to be talking about challenging behaviors. So first, a few housekeeping rules. If you hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen, you will see a chat button. And if you want to ask any questions, you are more than welcome to put any of your questions into the chat box. Otherwise, once I'm done with my presentation, I am more than happy to take questions and answers as well. You can put them in at any time, and if I do have a moment, I will check them during the presentation. All right, I am going to share my screen with you my host has disabled the share screen. Konstantinos, if you don't mind adding me as a co-host, and I will share my screen. Hopefully he'll get that done in just a moment. There we go. And I am going to share my screen with you. Give me one moment. A few items though. I don't know if some of you have received this handout from me. However, when I am presenting, if you do have questions and you think about them later on from something that we've gone over, what I'd love to have happen is for you to actually ask questions now so that you don't forget them. It's actually really important that you do that so that way we have everything down. Okay, let me share my screen with you. I'm going to just start my slideshow from the beginning. There we go. So first, again, my name is Dr. Tamar Andrews. When this is over, I'll also be putting my contact information. After the last few sessions that we've had, I've gotten some really wonderful questions from those of you in the audience, and I love being able to expand on whatever it is that you don't walk away not understanding what's going on. First of all, what is a challenging behavior? So a challenging behavior could be anything that is exhibited by a child, excuse me, that results in either self-injury. So we have some children who will bang their head or throw themselves into a wall or try to jump out of a crib or out of a bed. It can cause injury to others. How many of you might have children who bite you or hit you or pull hair or to do that to others? It can cause damage to the physical environment, meaning that it can break things, throw things, destroy things, tear things. It also can interfere with the acquisition of a new skill. So when you're trying to show your child how to tie their shoes or help them with their homework, they might get so frustrated and become so challenging that they actually can't do the work that they're supposed to do. It also can socially isolate a child, and that's also very difficult because then nobody wants to hang out with them. Nobody wants to play with them, nobody wants to be with them. And sometimes you as their parents don't want to take them anywhere. So it not only socially isolates the child, it can socially isolate you as well. I want to use this optic, this picture, to explain something to you, and we're going to refer to it several times. This is an iceberg. So what you see here is not a mirror image. However much you see on top of the water, there is another part, and if you can see my mouse, that is the part that actually lies below the surface. And that is what we describe a challenging behavior as. So the behavior is what we see on top of the water. Then if you stand right on the edge, you can maybe see a little bit underneath, but you can never really see what's at the very bottom of the iceberg. And those are the things that precipitate a child's challenging behavior. Now, in a very neutral environment, that might be that the child is hungry or tired, and it's nothing really very big. That's when you look just over the edge and what you can see. What you might not realize, though, is that there's something could be much deeper than that, exists much deeper, and that could be that the child might have something physical or mental or something that exists that's beyond the capability of the child to control. And it's almost like an anchor that's way below the surface that you can't see why it is that the child is exhibiting these behaviors. We'll talk some about those as well today. So let's talk also just a little bit. Find out what is happening and what do you already see. And I want you to pay close attention to those things. You might even want to start creating some kind of a list. And the reason for that is because sometimes there are patterns to our behavior. That every time we're hungry, we do this. Or every time we're anxious, we do this. There's a great story that I have about a little boy that was in my care in our school, 4-year-old boy, and every time he would walk over to other children, he would start beating them up, hitting them, throwing things at them, crying, screaming, yelling, destroying. If they were playing with blocks, he would destroy their blocks. If they were coloring, he would take a crayon and write all over their paper. And the first few times that this happened, his parents hit him because they thought that if it was possible to actually hit him and train him the same way you might do a dog or an animal, that maybe they could beat this out of the child. The child still did this, and yet when he did it the next few times, he did it and then he ran away to where he could hide. It was very, very intimidating to the parents, thinking that their parenting wasn't working. They finally sought the help of somebody who was more of a professional, a psychologist. And the psychologist said simply, I think your child has an anxiety, a social anxiety. So rather than put him into preschool or bring him to very large parties right away, as you've been doing, and he's been going more and more anxious, try taking him to play dates where there's only one child. Take him to your in-laws' house where just the in-laws are there. Acclimate him slowly to social situations, and you'll see that this might actually go away. And sure enough, it took about 2 years. But now the boy is 6 years old, and he is able to go to any situation, any social situation. He's able to actually go to school, and he's now in 6th grade. It's a very large class, although now he's Zooming, so I guess he's back to being able to be more secure. But the point is that you don't always see what lays way below the surface. All the parents saw was that he was engaging in very antisocial behavior. But it wasn't that he wanted to be antisocial. It was that he had a social anxiety. So just remember that. The next thing I want to show you is, this is my list. There are so many more things that can be on this list, but I want you to take a look at this for just a moment and see if there's anything on here that resonates with you, that is something that bothers you the most of all of these behaviors. For me, it was always whining. I couldn't stand it when my children went when they spoke. So that was my personal trigger. Now, the other thing I want to share with you is that a high quality caregiving, high quality, when you're really great parents and you have a high quality environment, it doesn't mean that there will be no challenging behaviors. In fact, if you have a child who is perfect all of the time, you actually have a child who has some very strong issues. You just don't see them yet. But it is very important that you recognize that those challenging behaviors are really part and parcel of strong and appropriate and healthy child growth and development. I want to make that also very clear. So you can give the best kind of environment possible, and what will happen is the child will exhibit a challenging behavior because they're testing the limits. That is their job. Their job is to test limits. Imagine when you go to negotiate a business deal and somebody says, I'm going to give you $100. Would you just take that $100? You know that if you're a good business person, you're going to go in and say, no, I want $1,000. And so the negotiation begins. We learn negotiation tactics in childhood. We learn how to identify those markers that tell us we're at the end or there's still some leeway. So I want to share with you then that the fact that addressing challenging behaviors means development of social competence. And so there are 4 decision-making steps that children have to learn. They have to learn that there are some decisions that are just mine. That is when I speak low and slow. Do you see? There is no negotiation in me right now. And my children learn that from my body language, from my tone, and the fact that I'm speaking low and slow. The next negotiation is my decision, but I'll take some of your input. I'll take it under advisement. That's when I say things like, no, we're not going to the store today, which shows them that, oh, I still have some leeway. And so they might say, well, why not today? Here's what'll happen if we don't go today. Here's why we need to go today. And they might negotiate a little bit, and I have to take their advice if I think they're right. Just because I say no the first time doesn't mean I don't value their input. And in fact, if once in a while you go back on that no and you accept their input, you are teaching them negotiation tactics. Again, it'll serve them really well later on in life. It doesn't mean you're wrong or you're a bad parent. It means you respect and value their thoughts as well. The third negotiation method is we are all one family. In my family, I have 4 children. There are 6 people. There are 6 votes. We're going to take a vote as to what we're going to do for dinner or where we're going or what time we're leaving. Whatever it is, it also shows them to understand and accept the one man, one vote rule. And the last negotiation tactic there is I'm not going to even have a vote. I'm going to let you kids decide and give them some of the power in the home. Again, showing them that this home is theirs as well and that we're not a dictatorship, which is important because many people tend to revolt eventually against dictatorships if they always hear the word no. And again, don't forget, if you have any questions for anything that I'm saying today, to make sure that you put them in the chat so you don't forget them. I want you also to know that challenging behaviors begin very early in life. In last week's session, I told you that you couldn't spoil a child until they were about 2 years old. However, you can already plant the seeds of challenging behaviors and lifetime problems from a very young age. And so what that means is that from a very young age, I'm going to say from the time they're born, you can't hold them enough, you can't love them enough, and you also can't talk to them enough. Even though an infant doesn't understand anything you're saying, you never want to just grab an infant. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to use my water bottle as an example. Let me just push my computer back a little bit. So if I've got a child and they're in a high chair or in a car seat and they're 6 weeks old, we have all been taught, and I share in this transgression as well because I didn't know any better when I had my first child. I was 23, although I'm only 20 now. When my child was in the car seat, I would simply grab her and take her out. When she was in the high chair, I'd simply grab her and take her out. And we now know that the better thing to do to start planting those seeds of respect is to actually say to the child, holding out your hands, I'm taking you out of the car now. The child doesn't necessarily understand what you're saying, but what they do understand is that there is a conversation, a discussion that happens before something happens to me. And the child starts to learn that they can trust you because they want to learn what you're saying to understand that negotiation and that discussion happening before somebody touches my body. It also teaches them that people can't just touch my body without my permission. And as they learn the words, they realize that this is what you've been saying all along, and that I can trust people to actually share information with me. It also means that it begins early. If any of you had joined me in the last few weeks, we talked about how you are the architect of a child's brain. So every time you handle that child in a method that is counterintuitive or counteracts normal growth and development, such as severe beatings, abuse, a lot of yelling in the house, and we will tackle just yelling and things like that at another session. But when there is a lot of yelling, that cortisol and adrenaline are coursing through that child's brain, so that every time they understand that they see you, they start getting anxious and anticipating that you might yell again. And so their brain behaves differently every time they see you. And it becomes a negative interaction even before the interaction began. Let me repeat that one more time. When you yell frequently or hit frequently, your child learns to anticipate that when I see my parent or that particular person, I anticipate that there will be yelling and hitting. And as a result, the cortisol and the adrenaline start flowing even before we interact, so that our interactions will therefore always be negative. So it's important that even though this is a very short session today, that you keep that in mind. The early predictors of challenging behavior are going to be temperamental difficulties. So kids who are easily angered or slow to warm up or socially anxious, early aggression, children who from a very early age are hitting and biting and doing things like that. And it could be either something that we can fix more in-house, as I call it, or something that might require the skills of a trained professional. Also, early predictors are language difficulties, because as they realize when they grow up and they're now 2, 3, and 4 years old that people don't understand me and I can't have my needs met, that frustration and anxiety starts to build. And the last one is non-compliance. And especially for us parents, it's very hard when children don't comply. So we will deal with compliance today as well. I also want you to be aware of the things that you bring to the table. So maternal depression, when mom's depressed and doesn't give enough love and attention to a child. The harsh parenting that I just described a moment ago. Stressful family life events. Low social support. So parents who don't have any babysitters or anybody who can even just take the children for an hour and give the parents a little bit of a breathing room. And family instability. And that can be divorce or death. It can also mean that the children are shipped from parent to parent to parent and don't really have a regular routine every single day. Young children who have challenging behaviors that are not addressed are often rejected by their peers. They receive less positive feedback, meaning that they're not told how wonderful they are. Remember that in life, the only true cheerleaders that a child will have are their parents, right? The minute something successful happens to them, maybe until they get married, they want to tell their mom and dad, oh my gosh, look, I got an A, or look, I won an award, or look, I fell down and I was able to help myself up on my own and I did it by myself. They'll do worse in school and they're less likely to be successful in kindergarten and every other age. And finally, preschool children are 3 times more likely to be expelled than children in grades K through 12. So that means that if you have 100 children, those maybe 40 might be expelled just in preschool compared to 20 between K through 12. And the reason for that is because many preschool teachers simply don't know how to deal with many of these challenging behaviors. And I also want to show you this, and this is important. And if I don't teach you anything today and you only remember this, if a child doesn't know how to read, we teach them, right? And if a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach them, right? If a child doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. And if a child doesn't know how to drive a car, we teach. And if a child doesn't know how to behave, what do? Do we teach or do we punish? Remember also that if punishment actually worked, you would never have somebody going to jail twice or committing a crime twice, because that lesson would have been enough in order for them not to do it again. So this is a valuable lesson to all of us, that we need to treat our children, yes, with a little bit more kindness, softness, and compassion, because remember, they're like people going through the Amazon forest for the first time and don't know how to navigate it. So I want to start off here first. I know many of you might have children who either have just gone back to school or are starting school if schools where you are opening up, or even if they're doing it on Zoom still, they need to have a daily routine. So the daily routine, and I advocated this last week, but it's important that you follow through because it really works. So see how there's numbers. Number 1 is we wake up and give them a few minutes to wake up. It's important that children know that they have those few minutes to simply stretch and welcome and bless the new day. Then they get up and they might brush their teeth or get dressed or do something else, and then they go potty, right? And we want to have pictures for that too, because sometimes kids get so excited that they forget that it's time to go potty. They shower, if you shower them in the morning, or they brush their teeth if they haven't done that yet. Then they eat, right? We have to start off our day with a good breakfast. Whatever it is, even if it's just a granola bar, children have to have something in their bodies. They're too small to be able to fast for 12 hours. They put their backpacks on, they get whatever they need ready for school. And if you're Zooming, it means that they set their place up in front of the computer and they start learning. They start reading, they start watching, they start listening, they start learning. It's also important, very important, that you put time out in their day for exercise. And that should be different breaks throughout the day. They shouldn't be stuck in front of a computer for more than about 90 minutes at a time, depending on their age. The younger they are, the less it is. So you've got to break up that routine and have set times in the routine, even if it's just taking a walk around the block. And finally, you have to have your bedtime routine. So you might add in there dinner, bath, bedtime story, and then bed. Seeing the routine, getting used to the routine will actually help them also with some of their challenging behaviors. I will bet some of them revolve around waking up and going to sleep. The middle of the day seems to be the best. Why? Because they're not hungry and they're not tired. So it's the two parts of the day where they're tired and hungry that you will have some of your biggest challenging behaviors. The other thing that is often hard for children are transitions. They don't remember that you asked them to do something. They're busy. Their minds are elsewhere. I always say that when the child is in the middle of playing or doing something that they love, it's like they're on Pluto or Mars. They're on another planet. And they don't want to get back into that rocket ship and leave because a child doesn't know that they'll ever be able to come back to it. The younger they are, the more they don't understand this because they don't have something called object permanence. So I did promise that I was going to go over the steps to positive behavior modification, and this is it. It's that easy. So you tell a child from the time they're 2 years old. It doesn't start earlier than this. It can only start once they're 2 years old. But you basically go to the child and you say, here's what I need you to do. So we'll make something up. I need you to sit down and finish your homework. Now you have to give them about 30 to 60 seconds in order to process that, because you can't simply walk around always barking orders at your child as if they're a slave. Again, remember that you are not raising a child, you are raising an adult, and you won't always be there to tell them what to do. So if they are in the middle of doing something, afford them the respect of a few more moments to finish what they're doing. So I need you to sit down and do your homework. This is for an older child, obviously. The next thing you say after about a minute is, okay, and notice my tone. Okay, if you can't do it yourself, I'm going to help you. It's not, do you want my help? None of these are phrased in terms of a question. These are all statements. So remember, we're in the Amazon forest. If you don't know how to navigate yourself, I'm going to help you. So if you can't do it yourself, I'm going to help you. And again, you give that older child about a minute. See if they respond, hear what's going on back and forth. If they don't respond, or if they don't do it and they don't get up, then your next statement is, okay, I see you need my help. And you simply go and you pick up the child and you put them at the table. Now, you cannot force them to do anything at the table. They're simply at the table. So we'll get to that in a moment, but that's a different set of techniques. For a younger child, the steps might be, it's bath time. I need you to come to the bathroom. We're taking a bath. The child doesn't react. They're busy playing Legos, whatever they're doing. You're going to give them that 30 to 60 seconds. Dun, 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 dun. I know it's hard because you want it right now, but you got to time it and you got to give them some time. The next time you say, it's bath time. If you can't do it yourself, and you have to repeat that command again, it's bath time. And if you can't come to the bathroom yourself, I'm going to help you. Again, my tone, very positive, not negative. You always want them to view you as a parent as somebody positive. And if they don't come, then you go get them. You simply pick them up and you say, okay, I see you need my help. And you put them into the bathtub, even if they're kicking and screaming. Why? And that's the big question, why? So remember I said a few minutes ago that your child is going to grow up and be an adult, and you're not going to always be there to help them. One of the things that they have to learn early on in life is the consequences of their choices. So the choice here was not to go to the bath. The choice here was whether or not they wanted to come alone. Children always fiercely guard their independence. And so it's really important that as you are going through this, the choice, again, positive tone, positive voice with a smile, the choice is always yours as to whether you want to be independent or not. I am not your slave master. I am your parent guiding you through life. So I'm trying to guide you and show you that right now, the important thing to happen is that you take a bath. It's part of the routine. You have the choice of coming by yourself or not. Now they go into the bathtub, they sit for 2 minutes, and then they start trying to get out. I would rather you help them out and let them finish that bath too quickly today. Because let's face it, as long as they've been in the water a little bit, a lot of that dirt has come off. But you don't want to win every single battle, because otherwise everything will become a battle. So if they got into the bath and now they want to come out alone, remember how we talked about the 4 different kinds of decisions? Let this decision be your child's and let them come out of the bath. They will then see tomorrow when it's bath time, I will bet you money that it will be easier to get them in, knowing that they can come out whenever they want, because that will be their decision. And they'll probably want to stay in longer because children love being in the bath. And then I'll take questions on techniques for this from all of you, because I don't see questions yet, but we'll see what your questions are regarding this. The other thing I wanted to share with you today, many children's challenging behaviors in life are going to revolve around their friends. It'll either be because they're very young, up to the age of about 4, and they don't know how to ingratiate themselves in play. It can also be because they're older, and one of the hard things about children when they're about 4, 5, 6, 7 years old is that they think that friendships can only be 2 people at a time. So if I'm talking to Mary and Mary thought, Mary's talking to me, and Melissa thought that I was her friend. If Melissa sees me talking to Mary, she'll think that I'm no longer her friend, that I can only be Mary's friend. The water going into the bucket, and the child never wanting to take that bucket out of the bathtub, if you remember that analogy I gave you. They can't see 2 things at the same time. So they can only see that I'm friends with Mary. They can't in their brain recognize that I can be friends with Mary, and then another time I can also play and be friends with Melissa. So if you want to help them with some of those challenging behaviors, before you start asking for professional help, make sure that you give your child always suggestions. So, oh, you could play Lego, or you can play hide and go seek, or you can play tag, or how about if I make you some cookie dough and you and your friend can shape the cookies. Make sure that your child brings enough toys and other materials to share. So offer, why don't you share with Mary? Maybe that way she'll want to play with you. Teach your child to take turns. Some children have a very hard understanding of the take turn dynamic. Give compliments. Teach your child how to give compliments. In fact, when you're out in public or when you go to grandma's house, prepare your child in advance for a compliment that they might give grandma or somebody else. Understand how and when to give an apology. Your child will never learn to apologize if you yourself don't show them that you apologize to the child. So when you bump into your child, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to step on your foot. Or, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to take you out of the bathtub. I didn't realize that you weren't done yet. And I'm sorry, and tomorrow I'll make sure to ask you. And then begin to empathize. Share those words like, oh my gosh, my love, I see that you're really scared, or I see that you're really sad, or I see that you really wanted a turn. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. I see that you really wanted them. Give words to some of the feelings that they're having. So that way they can learn to do those things. And you can also give them problem-solving skills, things like always ask yourself, if it's not going your way, what's your problem? My problem is that Mary doesn't want to play with me. Okay, so if you have a problem, like Mary doesn't want to play with you, think of some solutions. What would be a solution? I mean, do you want to hit her? No, would that solve? Would she want to play with you if you hit her or if you knock down her blocks? Would that be fair? No. What if you said something nice to Mary? Or what if tomorrow we bring to school your dinosaur toys and you tell Mary that you want to play with her in the block area and that you guys can use your dinosaurs? Let's give it a try. I bet that would be something really, really cool. So again, teach your child on their own how to problem solve and talk to them about playing with their friends in school. Talk to them about what goes on at school. Talk to them about the things that worked. Talk to them about the experiences that they had. So for example, don't always say what happened in school. They're going to say nothing. Every child everywhere will say nothing because that's like a pop quiz. But if instead you frame your questions to something they feel successful about, oh, I bet you played with somebody today, and I bet you like to color, you colored. Did you color alone or did you color with somebody? And you can also say, you know, I'm sure you played with kids today. What were some of the things you were curious about? Or what were some of the questions you talked about? And I like playing with my friends too. I like playing cards with my friends. What do you like playing with your friends? Ask them pointed questions like that. The other thing that I would say as the parent is sometimes I want to play with my friends and I want to play with what they're playing with. But when I play, sometimes I feel like taking their toys. Like I play cards with my friends or I play backgammon, but sometimes I get frustrated because I know they're winning. So I want to take one of their backgammon pieces and put it like somewhere else because I'm blocked in and I feel like hitting or kicking. And then my friends will get sad or mad when I hit or kick or I use mean words or take their toys. What do you think I can do instead? We call this the therapeutic use of self. Children don't often like talking about themselves, but if you put it in the context of you and you're asking your child for advice, sometimes when they hear themselves giving advice to you, they might actually then be able to give advice to somebody else. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute just to see if I see that there's a question in the chat. Let me just open that up. Oh, would you like to use your full screen? Oh, I'm okay. Sorry, that was bad. What is the most effective way to handle a child's challenging behavior? Oh boy, that's a loaded question, Mildred. And I'll tell you that I'm going to say that number one, there's two sides to this question. It's a great question. Number one is it all depends on the situation. So you have to be able to be flexible and creative, innovative in every situation. But if I were to say one thing, it's probably going to be to keep this face. Remember that our children push our buttons. Our children, mine are upstairs, but mine make me cry sometimes. They make me angry, frustrated. I think the most important thing is to always keep yourself calm. And I get into something in a minute, but family factors. So Zarlish John, I'm going to ask you to maybe expand on that while I go through the PowerPoint just a little bit more. The reason why is because I don't know what you mean by family factors. So tell me what you mean by that. But the most important thing is to keep your calm. I'm going to give you an example for this. And Mildred, you asked a great question. Have you ever walked into a clothing store especially where they have, like Michael Jackson music playing? And all of a sudden, you feel a little bit more upbeat. You might be walking a little bit faster. You hear the music, and you're in a little bit of a better mood. We tend to go, our hearts even, tend to go to the beat of the music or the people's rhythms that we're with. So if you're at a dinner table and everybody's yelling, what do? You yell, right? Just to get your voice heard. When you're at a disco and the music is playing and it's very loud and boisterous, you start feeling like you want to dance too. And when your parents are stressed and anxious and yelling, you yell back. But if this is the voice and the facial expression and the tone that you have when you're dealing with a child, even a child who's driving you bonkers, you will be able to tone down the mood. So when they go high, we go low. And it's important not only that, but that you start talking low and slow. And notice how you have to pay attention to every word I'm saying because I'm talking so low and slow. And let's see, if a child hits his head on the wall or on the floor out of anger, or in case he needed something, how do we deal with it? And Hussein, again, we call a challenging behavior as one when the child causes self-injury to themselves. So that is a great question. So first of all, Hussein, can you tell me really quickly how old is your child? Because it's a different answer. Again, we have to deal with each one of these examples for children of different ages. So a child who is 7 is much different than a child who is 2. So Hussein, I'm going to wait to answer your question until I see how old your child is. Oh, a year and a half. So I would probably say that you're going to have to take the anger or the frustrating thing out of the equation because he's only a year and a half. So what's wrong now, and I'll guess that this is a child who also doesn't have great language, because that is the typical frustrating exhibition of a lack of language at that age, because this child no longer can control his situation and he can't get you to help him meet his needs. So he's doing whatever he can in order to self-soothe and get some kind of input. So because the input isn't coming from anywhere outside, he's only able to control his own body. And so that's why he's hitting his head, because he's only able to control something about himself. For a 1.5-year-old, I know this is going to sound crazy, but you've got to completely change the dynamics of this situation. I want you to go I call it Mary Poppins. If you know that, I don't know if it's a Walt Disney story or whatever, but I want you to go Mary Poppins, which is, oh my goodness, change your accent, fall on the floor, completely redirect him. But you've got to start doing this over and over so that you extinguish the behavior. Extinguishing the behavior means stopping it from ever even happening. Although I would guess that once he's a little bit older and he has language, it'll probably die down a little bit as well. But you do want to either take away the reasons for his anger, because remember, we cannot spoil a child until they are 2 years old. His brain doesn't work the way any of our brains work. But if you allow it to continue and you say to yourself, oh, he's just doing it to himself, this is his problem, what you're doing is you are building a new structural memory, which will be part of his psyche, which is self-infliction or self-harm when something doesn't go my way. So you've got to take care of that. Hussein, in the chat room, I am also going to put my email address. And if you want, you can even call me and we can set up our own little Zoom, because I do want to help you take care of that, because it can be something that becomes more severe. And I need more details, obviously. What about a child who exhibits different behavior in school and different at home? Oh, Lee, that's a great question. So I will tell you, I am hoping that it's challenging behavior at home and the teacher tells you he's perfect at school. Is that yes? Let's see if she or he answers this, because I'm hoping it's a yes, that the challenge is at home and the good behavior is at school. Lee, are you there? Yes. Okay, she wrote yes in the chat. Yay! That means you've done a fantastic job. And I'll tell you why. That makes me really happy, because you might not even need much of this. You might only need the challenging behaviors a little bit. Think about this, okay? For those of you that live with a loved one or your parents, would you treat your friends out in public the same way you yell or sometimes abuse your spouse or your parents or your children? The answer is no, because we let our guard down with people we love. And for children, we test our boundaries with our parents. We want to know how far we can go with those negotiations, how far we can go in trying to get our way, how far we can go in ignoring requests. And so if they go to school and they behave well, it means you've taught them and they now know how to behave in public. They just don't know yet how to have respect and behave appropriately at home. Now, again, I'm going to share with you, I have 4 grown children. My oldest is in her 30s, my youngest is 21, and I still am the mom to those 4 kids. I still parent. Your job as a parent will never end. I always tell my children, it won't even end on my death, because you're going to hear me ringing in your ears when you go out. Remember, when you go to somebody's house, bring a gift, right? Remember to always send a thank you card. So Lee, what we have to do for you is really just help you tackle your parenting style at home. So they're hearing what you say and they're learning what you teach. They're just not doing it at home. And so again, that might be something about the dynamics of what's going on at home. And we can work on that as well. Let's see. And, oh, Mildred, sure. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm going to share my screen again and just finish what I had. Let me go down. So if I want to join in play, here's what we teach them. I need to join nicely or ask to play with my friend's toys. I can say, can I play with that toy, or can I play with you? But we always want people to tell us how wonderful our children are. How do we translate this to home? Even if your child pushes your buttons, in the heat of the moment, it's not going to work. But when things have calmed down and your child engaged in a challenging behavior, it's okay for you to say things like, you know, you see the pictures of our schedule. You know that every night you need to take a bath. So tell me if there's something different you'd like to do when I tell you it's bath time, so that you'll come to bath when I call you. Do you want me to give you, and this is something you should be doing, and if not, you should. How about if I give you a 5-minute warning? So I will tell you that it's 5 minutes to bath time, and then you'll know, and then I might even give you a 1-minute warning. And that way I won't just tell you to come, and I'll give you the time and the respect. I don't know that you have to say all of that, but you're going to give your child the time and the respect to finish what they're doing and to anticipate that bath time is coming up. Because don't forget, they get lost in play. I will tell you honestly, I play online Scrabble, and I also Candy Crush sometimes, and I can get lost in it as well. So it's important that you give your child the respect that they need to do that. The other thing is, I like to call it super friends. They're superheroes. What is a super friend? A super friend is someone who can play nicely, who can take turns nicely, who can go with the flow. So if somebody says they don't want to play, it's okay. It doesn't mean they're not your friend or that they don't like you. It just means they don't want to play right now. And I can also stop and think about what my options are and then do some of those options. The other thing I want, oh, whoops, there we go. Paint the picture. I always want you to paint the picture for the child. The photograph schedules give children a really clear sense of time and expectations with routines. If you didn't do this yet after my last workshop, or if you weren't there, I really want you to make a picture routine. Even if you have a child who is 8 or 9 years old, if they can't read words yet, we've turned our dining room now, because we don't really invite many people over, but we've turned our dining room into a shared workspace where everybody's computers are and everybody works in there. And so instead of a visual, we have a huge whiteboard, and my children still use that whiteboard in order to write down what is the schedule for the day. So that is where these pictures lead. Those picture routines lead to people who understand writing down appointments and getting them all in. Mini schedules also allow for predictability with individual activities within the daily schedule. So what does that mean? A mini schedule might be that you've blocked out an hour for physical exercise, but the mini schedule would be, okay, what are we doing tomorrow? Let's write down what our physical exercise is going to be tomorrow. The activity task sequences represent the steps within an activity. So homework time, for those of you that have older children, and especially if they have a lot of homework, it might be, let's only work on your vocabulary for 10 minutes. That's not so exciting. Then the fun stuff is, let's read that story together that you have to read for this class. And then we'll come back and we'll do 5 more minutes of the vocabulary. In fact, it's better to break up more difficult things into little bits. And the visual cues also are used to communicate very clear expectations with your child. So again, I cannot stress enough how important those are. And lastly, my last couple things are things that I've written out that I want you to understand. Young children are driven by emotions, not logic. And so irrational behavior is normal and to be expected. The part of the brain that controls emotions and actions, that allows us to think, plan, and problem solve, doesn't even start to really develop until close to the age of 3. Most kids can't consistently self-regulate until 5 or 6. And even then, it's a skill that most of us are still working on into adulthood. Toddlers are becoming increasingly aware that they're separate beings, and that's scary. But at the same time, they have separate thoughts and feelings from us. And while they want to sleep in your bed, we know that that's not what you necessarily have in mind. And so sometimes these become those challenging behaviors. They also have strong feelings, but few tools for managing them at a young age. So think about it. We adults are still working on being aware of our feelings and our words and how to express ourselves and to act on them in healthy ways. And yet we expect our toddlers to behave better than we have expected for ourselves. Stay in control when your child is spiraling out of control. Managing your reactions and your emotions is one of the most important tools at your disposal. I'm going to stop my screen share here. We have about 12 minutes left for questions. Let's see. Okay, Anna Maria. My daughter is trying to be the boss all the time. Yes, good. At home, at school, and with her friends. She's always yelling at her brother and her friends if they don't listen to her. She's 9, and she's been like this since she was 4 or 5. Okay, are her brothers older than younger, although that matters a little bit, not much. So you've got a little bossy girl, and that is her personality. And that's going to be tough. So what you need to do is, I would say, just like that example of that little boy that we had to gradually ease him in. She's already 9. So she's had 9 years of bossing, possibly with not much other than negotiations and tough work with you guys. So what I'd like you to try, I'm going to give you a few things, and then you'll have to figure out what will work with you. I want you first to invite one friend over. And they're always going to be better with friends than with family. So it's got to be a friend or somebody that doesn't live in the home. And I want you to prep her. So it might be that we're going to have a play date. It's only going to be for 1 hour. So don't make it too long where you're going to be able to walk away and not participate. Now, I know that you like to be bossy, and sometimes, especially if she has a high IQ, she thinks that she knows more than others. She might also not like to be wrong and fear failure. So there's a lot of other things. And Anna Maria, you can also email me and we can talk more about maybe some of the things that are underlying that need to be a boss. But set up these play dates and have those mini scripted activities. So when your friend comes over, you guys can play this or this. Let's plan it. Let's make even a visual cue. You can even take pictures. So she'll have a visual schedule of what she's going to do with her friend. And you're going to play for about 15, 20 minutes in your room or in the den or the living room, whatever, outside. Now, what can we do so that you can be in control of some of the play? But what can we also do so that Mary can be in control of some of the play? What are some of the choices that you can give her? Because you like Mary and you want her to come over again, but if you're going to be bossy to her, remember that she's not going to want to keep coming over. So let's work on this. And then we're going to eat a snack. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to prepare the snack ahead of time, and then I want you to serve Mary. So, guest always comes first. You're going to serve Mary and give her some of the snacks. And let's make some of the snacks bigger and some smaller. And if Mary takes the bigger one, that's okay. She needs to know what I'm trying to get to here is we're going to teach her how to be gracious. Sometimes people who are very bossy are not always gracious. So we're going to teach that sense of graciousness. The other thing too is for the brothers, and again, I don't know how old they are. 1 year younger than her. Oh, great. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to talk to all of them all together when things are going very nice. And I want you to tell her that, and the younger ones, if you are bossy, you can stay doing what you're doing, but we have a right to leave, because that's what people are going to do to her, and they are going to walk out on her. So once she starts being bossy, I want you to grab the younger children, and I simply want you to just get up and walk out of the room, and you have to close the door. She's 9 years old. You have to close the door and lock it if you can, so that she can't come in. And the reason for that, and even if it's just for a minute or two, although my general rule of thumb is it has to be the number of minutes for the age that they're at. A 9-year-old will be really pissed if you lock that door for 9 minutes, but she has to realize that she has a choice to be bossy, and we also have a choice to get up and walk away from her. And she's got to realize that in life, people are going to walk away from her if she doesn't stop and change her attitude a little bit. And again, Anna Maria, feel free to reach out and we can go more into this. Okay, Dr. Moza, I have a child of 9 years old, very sweet, but we have 3 problems. He's scared from dark bathrooms, so he's got phobias or anxieties. He's lying a lot about his routine, his food, his time in the computer. He doesn't focus if we give him order. He'd do what he wants. Even he was following his routine until age 5 when his young brother arrived. Can you help? Okay. You have 3 different issues here that are not necessarily all connected. The problem is, number 1, he's got a phobia. It might be connected because the lying has come about. Many children, especially by the time they're 9, even earlier, they will start lying in order to circumvent anything that might be anxiety producing for them. One thing, and again, I don't know enough about your situation, but I'm going to give you the extreme here. One thing about anxieties is that they never go away. There is no way for a phobia or an anxiety to actually just go away. In fact, I can tell you that as a young child, I was so afraid of the dark, and I wouldn't go to sleep at night. I would more pass out because I thought of all the horrible things that would happen. Now, as a grandmother, although I'm only 20, when we built our house, we actually built these little lights all up and down the staircase and on the floors. So it gives kind of a glow, so the house isn't pitch black, it's just dark. But I can tell you that it actually never went away. I just learned to deal with it consciously, but subconsciously I still have that fear. So if you think that there is, and here's how you know if your child's got a true phobia or anxiety. If anything in your normal life changes, or you don't do things because of it, or children don't engage in typically appropriate behaviors as a result, then you need to get help. Now, I don't know what kind of doctor you are, but I will tell you that the only thing I believe works for anxiety and phobias is called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. I'll put it in the chat so you have it written down. Whoops. Cognitive behavioral therapy. And it is simply a way of talking through the phobias and getting through them appropriately. He's also lying about his routine, his food, his time in the computer. Then I'm going to say that if you know that he's lying, then what you have to do is somebody actually has to be on top of him until he gets back into his routine, because the lying will only get worse if he sees he can get away with it. And something happened when he was 5. That could have been something that changed in his routine. You know, his sibling came or whatever, but there's something going on. I will tell you also that as much as children at that age scream independence, the older a child gets, the more and more they need us, even more and more. So he probably needs somebody to hang out with him for about the next month and get him back on a routine. And then when you see him sticking to the routine, reward him and say, listen, I'm going to leave right now, but I need you to get your homework done. I need you to get this stuff done. And if I find that you've done it correctly, always do the positive, then how about you and I just go on a date and let's go get dinner alone one night and do something to reward his complying with the routine. Can you also enlighten us in teachers' perspective when the parents couldn't believe that their child behaves? You know, I think in that regard, if you don't know that you believe the teacher's perspective, because, you know, people sometimes want to tell you what's happening at school and make you happy. You can find out how your child is behaving. If, you know, they tell you that they're having a great day, if they're getting good grades, if you go through their backpack and they've done their work and you see how they're progressing. But typically, I will tell you, children really do behave much better typically at school than they do at home. In the chat box, my son is 9 years old and still cannot sleep in the night alone and takes time to sleep and very scared and he needs the door closed. Can you help me? So for sleeping, I'll give you the really quickie, but again, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Kwahiba, reach out to me. But I will tell you that for sleep, you and your spouse, if you have one, probably sleep together in a bed or in a room, and then you put your children to sleep alone in another room. And they know that you have cuddling and love and warmth and support, and yet our children sleep in rooms by themselves. And I'm going to tell you 2 things. Number 1, I would say you might want to try staying with your child until they fall asleep. And then a few nights later, stay right in the doorway of their room until they fall asleep. You can be talking on the phone, working on your computer, and then in the hallway where they can hear you but not see you. So again, this is like cognitive behavioral therapy. You're gradually extinguishing something that's causing anxiety. The other thing that you might want to do is put a sleeping bag on the floor in your bedroom and tell them that if they ever want, that they can come sleep in your room, but not in your bed. That is your bed. You don't sleep in their bed. They don't sleep in your bed, but they can come sleep on the floor in your room. Especially if it's a boy, by the time he hits puberty, he's going to want to sleep in his own room, but you have to help him get over that fear of the dark. So it's dark in your room too. It's just that he knows that you're there and it just gives you a sense of security. I noticed my child is almost 3. When we were at home, she was always telling us, don't touch it, mine. But when she is with friends outside, she always shares. Yes, then your child, Jenalu, Rosario, is actually appropriate. What you have to do then at home is teach sharing at home as well. Now, if there are other siblings, and it might be that she is trying to exert control over something and having her area. Don't forget that when we're with friends, we behave nicer, but at home we exert and we test our boundaries. So you can say something like, when she does that, have ready. Don't just pull it out, but have ready like a bag of candy and say, oh, you didn't want to share with me? Then I can't share my candy with you, or whatever else it is that you have. And say, well, if you want some of mine, I have to share with some of yours. And just keep reinforcing that. Remember that they're not going to learn it on the first try. Some adults don't share very well. So it might take 20, 30, 40, a lifetime. I don't know. Everybody's different, but it might be different for every child. And let's see, I think there might be one last question. My son is 2, and when he goes out of the room, he keeps running. Ooh, you've got a runner. Then what you have to do is you have to teach your child and tell them, I'm going to open the door. If when we open the door, I need you to walk out of the door appropriately. And if he can't, then the next time say, I'm going to open the door. I'm going to have to help hold your hand and help you, because we don't run out of the doors. We could get hit. And just keep holding his hand until you can trust that he's not going to run. But given his age, that's what they do. At 2 is when they start testing the boundaries. So don't put a leash on them, but just say, I can't trust you because every time you run away from me, I'm going to have to hold your hand and help you. And always use those words, help you. And then we'll take it from there. This is all the time we have for today. I want to thank everybody for coming today. My contact information, my email is in the chat box, and feel free to reach out. Imagine if we all practiced great parenting and loved one another. Oh, what a world it can be. Until next week, I hope to see you all next Sunday. Take care. Bye-bye.